Good morning. This is part 13 of Photoshop Basics class, and I'm glad you're joining us today. Okay, today we're talking about intro to adjustment layers. What are they, why you use them, methods of applying them, and types of them. We may not finish the types, but I want you to know that subsequent classes will be treating the types of adjustment layers. So follow us through, subscribe if you have not subscribed, and please hit the bell notification icon so you can know whenever I post new topics on this. Alright, to start, today we'll be talking about the adjustment layers. What are they? Okay, adjustment layers are simply layers you created by Photoshop. When you apply them, it's created, and from the word adjustment, they help to adjust the underlying layers. Do you understand that? I'm not sure. Alright, let's go over it. You probably have partook in one of the classes where I talked about types of layers. Please refer to that class if you have not listened to it. I'll leave the link in the description so that you can visit that class. Then the adjustment layer is just reached from many places. You know, Photoshop is just, you can reach it from many places with the keyboard shortcut, yes, and with the menu, and also from the layer panel. Okay, it equally has its own panel too. If you come to the Windows, you have adjustments. Okay, it has its adjustment panel and you have it all here. But I hardly use this, and I hardly go to the menu, even though I know it's here from the image menu, adjustment, and they are all lined up here. There is still the easiest way here, which is going through this adjustment layer icon here, and you see all the adjustment layers you can possibly use for beginners level. Okay, you need more, you could probably go to the image and find some that are not there. First of all, select a layer, select something first, so it should be active adjustments, and you see probably many layers you could use for your project. Okay, so adjustment layer, just add adjustment to the layers on the line. Okay, if the layer was black previously, adjustment layer can make it white. If the layer was in a color, red, adjustment layer can make it purple, yellow, white, even black. So adjustment layer just helps you to adjust all the underlying layers. So maybe even if you're doing a design and they tell you to change all the reds in the design to a yellow, don't worry, it's easy thing with Photoshop. It's just adjustment layer. You tell Photoshop to select all the reds and you tell it to change it to yellow, and it's just that simple. Okay, so for today we're going to know why you use them. Also, we use them basically because, you know, we have to make adjustment to images. Images come very rough sometimes. If you're a photo editor, you know what I'm talking about. Some images comes very rough, so you need adjustment layers to adjust them, maybe make them look very fine, the colors maybe dull, you make them look bright using some adjustment layers like vibrance, hue, and all that, saturation also. So we use them for adjustments, okay, of images. All right, and what are the methods of applying them? That's the third thing. Now the methods of applying them are just simple. You just need to know what particularly you're applying that adjustment to, or what adjustment you need for that. And so for today we're going to have these examples. Like this is a shoe here, right? And let's say I want to change the color of this shoe to yellow. No, there's yellow here already, red. So let's say we want to change it to red. We need an adjustment layer that will look at the color green and change it to the color of our choice. Okay, so if we say, for instance, we create an adjustment layer, which is I'm going to go in over the methods now. Method 1, you can come to the menu. Let's start from there and look for the adjustment layer that works best with that. For this kind, you can start with hue and saturation. Okay, and if you go with hue and saturation, this is what happens. It pops up this dialog box and asks you to make these adjustments. Okay, any adjustment you make, which I will not be talking about right now, but I'm just going to be making those adjustments, you will notice some kind of change in your image. Okay, that's what happens. I think I have somewhere around there red now. I can saturate it somewhere around there, but the legs are turning green. Yeah, it's normal. That's because we didn't make a selection first. Okay, but so far we have achieved the shoe being red, even though the legs are green. Okay, so but that's to tell you that there is an adjustment layer for this. But this method we went to, because we are talking about the method now, this method we went to, if we click OK to it, we have lost the original image. Let's undo and duplicate that. Now, because this is a raster base and not a smart object, and please, if you have not listened to the smart object topics, refer to it maybe in the description below or in the previous part 12 of this Photoshop basic class, okay, where I talked about adjustments and how to use them. So this is a raster base, and if we come over here and put an adjustment like the hue we just used right now, and maybe just adjust the color right there and increase the saturation so that the red comes out more and all, and click OK. Now that image cannot be recovered except by undoing, but the original image is here anyway, but just that this image cannot be readjusted. If for instance we want to add a little of the red more to the shoe or make it more saturated, we cannot go back again. We have to start all over. Okay, that's what it means. But if maybe when we duplicated this, let's hide this now, so we're seeing this, and we converted this to smart object, right click, convert to smart object, and we go back to that image adjustment and click on the hue and saturation and just adjust it like so, increase the saturation and click OK. Now we have this icon added here, which is not here now, but it's added here, telling us that there is an adjustment we make to this, and we can reach out to it clicking on this arrow. So here we see the hue and saturation that we just applied. If you double click on it, you will see that the last settings you saved or you did was is still there in the dialog box, so we can equally adjust it a little bit, and anything we want to do, and click OK. So this is better off because it's a smart object. One more thing it has is that it has a smart layer mask, a smart filters mask. It's also called smart filters or smart object. It comes with this mask, which means that if you listen to the topic on mask, okay, I'll leave the link in the description too. If you listen to the topic on mask, you will see that, remember that black hides and white reveals. So if I press Ctrl I right now, the black the effect is hidden, okay, and we can just take our brush tool and zoom closer and paint it with white selected. Make sure it's white on the foreground. Let me make this all right, white on the foreground, and we'll paint on the red or on the green part just to pop out the red of the shoe. To do this very well, I advise you make a selection of the areas you want red to be painted, and just do a, I'm just doing this roughly. You can see the greens are already entering into the legs. So you see, so that's how you can handle that if you use a smart object, but we can achieve that with this. In fact, this is permanently like that, nothing to be done. All right, so that's for you to know that this is a method. The other method is by coming down here, and this method creates a layer itself. I think this is the best way to say adjustment layer, because it creates a layer for itself. Okay, let's hide this now so that we can have this. And I just come here, there are many adjustment layers, just as we can see in this adjustment too, same way. So there's the same hue and saturation I picked up. I don't know why, I just love to use hue and saturation. Okay, so I use that, and let's say I put it right above this layer, and come here, under the properties, this is where we see the adjustment. Same thing we were able to see here when we clicked on this. Same thing we saw here is same thing that will be, we can't see it again because it's not selected. Okay, but same hue, saturation and lightness, okay, is also found here. Hue, saturation and lightness, and all other settings that we could possibly see there. So for this, we can also do the same thing. We can just adjust it like so. Let's make this maybe blue now. All right, and adjust it like so. Okay, and it has a layer mask, just as this has a layer mask, but a smart filter layer mask. So it has a layer mask, and we can inverse it and maybe take the brush tool with a white and in the foreground just paint over it, and we get our blue color. Make sure you're painting on the mask, okay, and we get our blue color. And you can see that makes a whole lot of sense. Okay, so that's just it. That's the adjustment layer. So that's the method of applying it, and the other one is if we have a shortcut. We also have if we use the shortcut. But one thing you have to take note of is, I just duplicated this now. One thing you have to take note of is you definitely want to apply shortcut to all the adjustment layers that you use often. Okay, there are the default shortcut, just like the levels has shortcut. The curves, Control M, hue, Control U, color balance, Control B, black and white, Alt Shift, Control B, invert, Control I, Shift, Control U for desaturate and all that. Okay, it doesn't work all the time for some layers. Okay, so we can press Control U and we have the hue and saturation. That's the other method we can use. Control U and we have the hue and saturation, and we can adjust. But remember, this is not a smart object, so whatever adjustment we make, you see, and we can click OK. See, we've just made this look even much more faded. Okay, just with the adjustment layer, and it cannot be recovered. Look at the before, look at the after, look at this adjustment, and look at it over here. If we switch out this layer, let's just take this above here, and here is another adjustment here, here is another adjustment here, here is another adjustment. So you can have, if it's a flyer you're designing, you can make many adjustments to it. So we're going to just talk about the hue and saturation, since we have been applying it, so that we can also practice it too. So for the hue and saturation, what it does is it changes color. Let's apply it, hue and saturation. Let's make that the first adjustment layer we're talking about. What it does is, for the hue, it changes the color. That's what the hue does. The saturation increases or decreases the color that the hue or that is selected on the hue section, while the lightness does increases or decreases the brightness or darkness of that color. So that's what it does. Okay, so for instance, this is a red, and we know that this is red, and we want to change the red in this color to maybe blue. One thing you need to take note of is every image has, especially skin images that has humans involved, it has a tint of red in it. Okay, so there is definitely red in this image. Okay, how do we know that? Because when we start changing the colors, you will notice that the red color, the entire color changes too. Okay, but before we go into changing the color, I want you to look over here, and you see the features of this place where that says master. We have reds, we have yellows, we have greens, we have cyans, we have blues, we have magentas. So what this means is that for the master is the control of all of the colors. Whatever adjustment you make, it affects all the reds, the yellows, the greens, the cyans, the blues, and the magentas. Okay, and for other colors, it means that it will focus on the reds only, and the other colors like yellows, it will focus on the yellow, and that's what it means. So if you want to concentrate on a particular color, then you need to come down and select that red. I will show you another method of concentrating more on the colors. But let's take, for instance, since we've chosen red and we know that this is red, and let's make adjustment. Now you can see the red is changing, okay, because we are changing the hue and saturation of the hue of that particular red. And so if maybe we want something like purple, but take note here on this side of the image, there is also red here, and so it has changed. So let's look at, as I'm changing it, it's also changing. So the tint of red is also in the image, and you have to take note of that. So let's say we leave it at blue, but you want it only on this particular skin, then you need to make a selection around it. You can just take the lasso tool and draw a selection, maybe not a lasso tool now, let's say polygonal tool because it's almost straight. Okay, just draw a selection around it. It's a rough thing, or you need to take your time. If it's just, I'm just hurrying up because it's a class. Okay, alright, so we'll take the brush tool and say the color should be applied only here. So maybe we can just press Ctrl I first, and no need, since we don't need for the brush tool, just deselect the selection, select our move tool and press Ctrl I again, and so the color is only applied to here, so it's not affecting the background because we have kept it within this selection. Okay, so you see, and if you remove it, look at the before and look at the after, the color has changed. Okay, so this is something I want you to also practice this week also. So I'll drop an assignment on the group in case if you're not joined the group, join the Telegram or the WhatsApp group so you can follow us in the class, in the ongoing Photoshop basic class. Alright, so this is how to use the hue and saturation. The other thing we can also do is let's go with another image now. Okay, let's say for instance now for this example I want to give, I think this image still works fine, so let me stay on this image, but I'll create a new hue and adjustment layer. So remember, we only affected the what do we call this now, the flag. Let's call this flag, even though it's switched off. But here now we also want to affect the flag, because that's where we also want to affect the flag, but we'll call this flag adjustment 2. Okay, but this time around, we had to make selection and all that, but this time around I want us to pick the color, like allow the program to focus on a particular color and make the changes. So what I'll do is, since this is selected, I come over here, look at this icon. This icon says click and drag in image to modify saturation. Okay, so if we click here and make a selection around here, okay, although it's adjusting the saturation, if you take note of the saturation is going up, look at it, I'm reducing the saturation and the image is not affected. This place is still blue, but just that reddish part, what is happening is because it has picked the color, like an eyedropper, and it has understood the range of that color. Look at where my mouse is, the range of that color from here to here. Okay, and so we can increase the saturation of that area and blow it. But you also notice that wherever that color is found is also blown to. The saturation is also blown to, because it's like a color region that we set here, or color range that we set here. Okay, so that's what is happening. So we can also, the same way we affected that, we can also affect the color that same way, and it will only be affecting that region sort of. Okay, although it's tampering with other region, but it's just normal. Okay, so that's for you to also know that that's one beautiful thing about the hue and saturation. Then the light and dark is just to make it a little bit darker. Okay, just as you can see here, make it a little bit darker. Maybe let's choose better color. I think I like this color so much, somehow it blends with the background. Okay, you can actually use your brush tool to remove some of all these little drops of color that is shown here. Just take your black brush tool, reduce the hardness, okay, and just brush up. You can reduce the brush, to just brush around that area. Okay, there you are. So just like that, use your brush tool. Why I'm doing this because I've taught the brush tool. Hope you follow the class on the brush tool, so you know how to brush very well. Okay, so just do a good job, because as a class I'm just rushing it. Alright, so that's the hue and saturation. But one more thing we all have to know, that whenever we see a layer mask like this attached to an adjustment layer, it means that we can adjust the layer mask differently, so that when you select the layer mask, what is shown on the property is different from when you select the adjustment itself, which in this case is hue and saturation. What is shown in the properties is different, and what is shown here is different. So take note of that, because this has a different adjustment like feathering. Okay, if you take the feathering high, you will see some colors coming into the towel. Take note of the colors. But if you reduce the feather, it looks very sharp. Okay, so that's something you should take note of. And density is the amount of that effect that is entering into it. Okay, that's density. Okay, because we brushed it off. All right, I understand, because we brushed it off. I think density will work in this example here, like this example. Let's go here now and reduce density, then you will see how it works. You can see now density has removed it totally. So the areas we actually didn't want the color to appear, it has appeared there. All right, so that is it on the methods of applying them. So we have the types of these layers, but I think that for us to better understand this, when we open this, we have them like in categories. Like you have solid color gradient pattern in a category, we have brightness, contrast levels, curves, and exposure in a category. Then we have vibrance and all this in a category too. Then we have this in a category. What you should know that this is like a fill adjustment layer category. Okay, what this one does is to add a layer of perhaps like solid color, gradient, color, and the pattern, just pattern it to fill up the entire place. Let me show you an example. A new document, to create a new document, 10 by 10 is okay. And so we can just come and say solid color and choose the color we want and click OK, and that color, it has created an adjustment layer, and we can remove the areas we don't want the color to show from the mask, or also come back and change the color to the one we want. You can also disable the mask and all that. So that's something you should take note of. So this is a section, they do the same thing. This creates a gradient too. Okay, then this is another section. What this section does is to change the contrast and the brightness of the job, but they do it in different ways. So even though this is brightness and contrast, there's also a way to use curves to achieve the same goal, though the names are different, but they are achieving almost the same goal. We'll come to treat it in the next classes, but just for you to know that these are types, and this is just where the color is. Vibrance, it has to do with adjustment of colors. When colors are dull, it becomes bright, and all that. Color balance, black and white, all this is just colors. And this is really an advanced class thing, okay? But this is just like oppositing, or we call it the difference layer. It just changes things, okay? All right, so that is it. Thank you for following up with this introduction to adjustment layers, and make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you can know whenever I post new tutorials. Until the next class, see you. Peace.